There's no doubt that One Direction are a global sensation. Born from the intense talent pool of hit show The X Factor, the 5 lads from Britain and Ireland have gone on to conquer the world.
One Direction are the biggest band in the world right now, and they kind of took the globe by storm.
I think it's just this unique chemistry that they have. Girls love them, boys love them, parents think they're clean-cut and wholesome.
Liam, Zayn, Niall, Louis and Harry have been on a whirlwind ride since 2010, when they were plucked from obscurity and are now some of the most famous faces on the planet, with their hit singles like What Makes You Beautiful topping the charts in many different countries.
When I heard What Makes You Beautiful, I thought, wow, it didn't sound like the usual boy band song.
After conquering the United States, the 5 boys are at the forefront of a wave of British musical success that some are claiming is a second British invasion.
No other British act has achieved what they've achieved to this scale in decades.
It's cool to be British, and One Direction are the flag bearers for our pop culture in this country at the moment.
One Direction are wanted on the biggest stages and by the best producers.
They have the looks, they have the talent, and everyone wants to be associated with them.
With multiple honors to their name, including 2 Brit Awards and millions in sales, YouTube hits and downloads, One Direction are completely out of this world.
They are the artists in this country who are selling the most records, not just on British turf, but around the world. And by around the world, we mean everywhere. They're huge.
You know, we're 18, 19, 20 years old. Like, people like us don't get to do stuff like what we're doing very often, and we just feel so grateful to, you know, all the fans who've put us where we are, all the you know, radio, music channels who've helped us along the way, and you know, we're just so grateful to have this massive opportunity, and we're having fun and working hard, and hopefully it keeps going.
The rise of One Direction has been phenomenal. The band of 5 boys from England and Ireland have conquered the world in spectacular fashion, acquiring a global fan base of millions and going from obscurity to megastardom in a very short space of time. Their videos on YouTube have collectively received over 1 billion hits, and the multi-award winners have record-breaking album sales and worldwide #1s. And to mark their sensational impact, 2013 saw One Direction receive the newly created Brit Award for Global Success.
The award for global success didn't exist before One Direction, and they were honoured with it because it was like fire spreading around the world. Everyone suddenly knew who they were, and they really had to be credited.
Congratulations, this is the Brits Global Success Award. You have sold 9.5 million albums. You've played in pretty much every country around the world. Harry, let's start with you.
This award is absolutely crazy. Just thank you so much. It's incredible. Thanks.
The group of Niall Horan, Harry Styles, Zayn Malik, Liam Payne, and Louis Tomlinson have become household names. And under the guidance of music mastermind Simon Cowell, they have achieved fame and fortune beyond their wildest dreams.
Simon's intent from the very beginning was to turn this self-made boy band into international sensations.
He's great at choosing the music, the A&R, the direction of the styling, the whole marketing part of it. Yeah, he's a very strong guiding force, and he will be throughout their career.
But where did this incredible journey begin for the 5 boys who have taken the world by storm? The 2010 series of hit show The X Factor ignited One Direction's explosive career, but the boys didn't arrive as a fully formed group.
One Direction didn't exist. They actually auditioned as solo artists and were seen as not quite good enough.
They failed to get into the kind of final as the boys, and you saw the disappointment on their face. And then suddenly, one of the judges decided it would be a good idea to put these 5 boys, who were very strong individually, but they just weren't quite strong enough to make the cut, into a group.
The boys were all eliminated at the boot camp stage of the show. But before heading home, the 5 were selected from the rest of the unsuccessful contestants and given a unique opportunity to remain in the competition.
The X Factor producers were quite clever about that, because had they not told the boys that they weren't getting through to the next round, they might not have wanted to join the band so much. But having been told that they were no longer a part of the show and that they hadn't got through to the next round, this lifeline of being in a boy band is that much more appealing.
The groups in the X Factor had never performed well, so Simon Cowell, who was a judge that year, he had actually developed a bit of a secret plan. He had decided to select 5 of the best male singers, young male singers, and put them together to form an X Factor supergroup. But it was interesting because there was competition between the judges, because on screen it was actually Nicole Scherzinger who came up with the famous line, "We should put some boys together to form a band." However, since then, Simon Cowell has actually said it was really his idea and Nicole just was given credit for it on screen. But Nicole Scherzinger says she's the woman behind One Direction.
I'll always remember on X Factor when the boys auditioned individually, because as they came on, I used to say, God, he'd be great in a boy band. Simon used to say to me, oh, everybody be in a boy band. If you had your way, everybody would be in a boy band. When I saw Zayn and I saw Liam and I saw Louis, I was thinking, boy band. But the reason One Direction are successful and the reason One Direction are the biggest boy band around the moment is all down to, I hate to say this, but it's all down to Simon Cowell. Simon made the whole thing happen, nobody else.
Whoever it was, when you actually saw them come together as a 5-piece, there was something that just clicked. They were like, you know what, they look really good together.
The main person I noticed was Harry, because he seemed to get quite a bit of airtime. The producers had obviously realised there was something quite cheeky about him. I think he was chatting someone up, one of the other contestants in the canteen, and they caught him on the Extra Factor. So I remember him, and I remember just his kind of overwhelming joy when he found out that he was actually going to go through into the band.
Good. How are you doing? Good morning. Good to see you.
One Direction was formed, the boys were saved, and it was clear from the start that there was instant chemistry between the 5 members.
I don't think anyone could have predicted how well they would all get on.
Yeah, they've got a good chemistry, if you will.
Yeah.
Rapport.
Oh, brilliant. Brilliant word today.
Mr. Vocab has arrived.
If you will. I'm here.
Over a couple of weeks, they spent a few nights at Harry Styles' house, just to get to know one another. And they really did hit it off. And I think you can tell when you watch them on stage, you can tell when you watch them in interviews, they do get on. And that could have not been the case, that really could have not worked.
It was really when I saw them behind the scenes that you could really tell that they had formed a bond and that they were like brothers. Because interestingly, the judges had also put together a girl group on the show that year called Bellamy. And Bellamy were the exact opposite to One Direction. They hated each other, they didn't get on, there was no good bonding between them.
I saw there was definitely a chemistry between the 5 boys, even though they were put together by Simon and me and everybody else in the show. But there was a genuine chemistry. They became friends. The 5 boys, it just worked.
I think our friendship's quite evident on like interviews like this. Like we're just full of banter. We just have a great laugh. It's like 5 best friends at school.
And they really were like 5 best friends. One Direction had to work hard to justify their place in the competition, and after a shaky start, the group really gathered momentum.
It was funny recently, I was looking back through my old Twitter feed to that series of X Factor when they came through, and I gave them a really hard time because they didn't look right together. The vocals were wonky, they needed a lot of work. But as the series went on, they gathered a following, and when the kids start to get behind a band like that, you know they're going to be a success.
I remember on the live shows there was total hysteria in the studio. Every time One Direction were on stage, there was mass hysteria inside. But also, what people don't know was that outside, there was always 200 or 300 girls looking for One Direction.
Girls were going crazy for One Direction. They were lining up outside their accommodation and they were cheering, they were following them. And there was a feeling of hype even before the X Factor final had been.
I was sitting in the canteen where all the contestants sit, and One Direction had come in to have their dinner. And the fans who were outside had realised that One Direction were in this canteen area and had climbed up the trees and started to climb on the roof of the canteen. And this was at the point when they were still only contestants on a reality TV show.
People backstage and the general public realised that this was something a little bit special, and actually they were here to stay, and it would be interesting to see how they progressed. And after about 4 shows, I actually remember having a conversation with Simon Cowell and saying, I love One Direction, they're going to be massive, they're going to be huge. I'm going to put 100 quid on them to win the show. And he looked at me, he winked, and he went, darling, make it 200. So I was like, great, okay. So I put 200 quid on them to win, told all my friends and family, put money on, my parents put 100 quid on, and obviously they came third. So thank you, Simon.
Following the grand final of the X Factor, One Direction finished in third place behind Rebecca Ferguson and winner Matt Cardle. But not being crowned as champions didn't mean the band had failed.
As the show progressed, they built a fan base. They started to get some momentum. And despite the fact that they didn't win or even come in second, I think Simon Cowell very astutely understood that this band had a lot of potential.
Individually, I think the members of One Direction would struggle to have a career, but the sum of the parts is quite an impressive prospect, really, and I think all credit to Simon Cowell for having that A&R experience in the music industry to spot that together they had a real force.
We knew we were onto something great. Even though they didn't win the show, One Direction were the real winners.
In January 2011, only a month after the X Factor final, Simon Cowell signed One Direction on a £2 million deal to his Psycho record label.
So what's your names, guys, anyway?
I'm Louis.
Louis.
Niall.
Harry.
Liam.
Cowell noticed that with his band Westlife bringing their glittering career to an end, a gap had opened in the UK and US market, and One Direction was the perfect fit.
I always had a very, very good feeling about One Direction because what you had is Justin Bieber exploding all around the world. There was a gap in the market for a young boy band.
Now, bear in mind, Simon Cowell has spent an awful lot of time working in the United States. And I think Simon, from the very beginning, maybe even in that semifinal, could already see how the American market would embrace this very Bieber-esque boy band. Instead of, one Justin, you have multiple Justins, and the exponential selling power that would bring.
After New Kids on the Block, NSYNC and Backstreet Boys, there hasn't been another boy band in America. So Simon knows, he saw a gap in the market. He had to fight UK boys, they're like the Monkees. So he knew he could do it in America. Simon knows what he's doing. He always knows what he's doing. I hate to say that. I hate to say Simon did it, but he did it. He made it happen.
Cowell took One Direction straight to the studio to begin work on their debut album. While the group had already recorded a single for the X Factor, a cover version of 80s hit Forever Young, it would not be released as One Direction had failed to win. But this did not stop the song reaching the fans.
One Direction really needed to capitalise on the success of X Factor, while these young girls that fancied them throughout the show still fancied them. So it was important to get something out soon. Obviously they hadn't won the X Factor, so they couldn't release straight away. There's a clause in the contract where you can't release after 3 months. But had they have won, then their single Forever Young would have been released. However, it was leaked, so lots of people got to hear it on YouTube. It was a huge success. Was this a mistake? Was it a coincidence? I don't think so, because the song sounded brilliant, and this could have been Simon Cowell's way of saying, they didn't win, but listen to this, they're brilliant.
Forever Young racked up millions of hits on YouTube and helped maintain the buzz around One Direction. But it was vital that their first official single was a smash hit.
Simon Cowell made sure that when it did come to the time where they were launching, they had the best songs, the best styling, the best videos, the best merchandise, and it was like this military operation, nothing left to chance.
With all the pieces falling into place, Cowell paired the boys with hitmakers Sava and Katecha to create a lead single that would send One Direction's sound and reputation around the world.
One of the very savvy things that Simon did from the very beginning was to put One Direction together with Sava and Katecha. He's written for very famous American artists like Carrie Underwood and Usher, and it was very smart on the part of Simon to put this band together with somebody who clearly knows both the UK and the US market.
Katecha would help write What Makes You Beautiful as their debut single. To be released in September 2011, it had been many months since One Direction were on the X Factor, and excitement for the boys' first official song was growing.
I remember the anticipation around that single was quite incredible. The music press, every press was just waiting to hear it.
One Direction came into my office to play me and my team single. We were the first people that ever played it to. So obviously they were probably quite nervous, but if they were, they hit it very well. They were all very, very confident. I think deep down they all knew they had a massive #1 hit on their hands.
That was the most crucial release of their career because their entire career hinged on whether this song was going to be a hit or not.
So we were all sitting around this old ancient stereo listening to the first ever song from One Direction. Harry and Louis were kind of bopping away, and Niall was as well. They were just really upbeat and just obviously really excited. Within the first 10 seconds, I knew it was going to be a hit. It was really catchy, different as well, and just perfect pop.
You don't know you're beautiful. If only you saw what I can see, you'll understand why I want you so desperately. Right now I'm looking at you and I can't believe you don't know. You don't know you're beautiful.
When I heard What Makes You Beautiful, I thought, wow. It didn't sound like the usual boy band song.
The lyrics for What Makes You Beautiful are exactly part of the appeal of One Direction because they really tap in to what young girls are thinking.
It really appeals to the 15-year-olds who loved them, but their mums as well. It's a universal message. You want to be told that you're beautiful, and it worked.
Harry, Zayn, Liam, Louis, and Niall all embarked on a rigorous publicity tour of the UK, making personal appearances, taking in shopping malls and radio stations, and performing the song live, all with the full support of Syco and Sony Entertainment.
That series of X Factor, no one could hope for better publicity for an emerging artist. And from being in the papers every day, they had to make sure there wasn't a lull where everyone forgot about them. So they really had to be everywhere, and the level of energies that they had, it was possible to do it. And when they came out with it, no one wondered where they'd been for the last couple of months. It was like they'd never been away.
I realised how much the label were backing them at that point because they flew one of my reporters on Bazaar around the country on a helicopter to see them doing signings for it. That's a sign that the record label backs you because they do not throw money around like that anymore.
You could put them on a radio show, they'd be on for 10 minutes, and you'd remember hearing them because they were so passionate and they were so excited, and that reflected in the music. Even the video, it's them having a fun day out in a camper van. I mean, everything about them was fun.
That's what makes you beautiful.
What Makes You Beautiful is a great pop hit, and when you've got credible music critics at broadsheet newspapers saying that it's not a bad song as well, I think that means that they could be around to stay.
It was a great radio-friendly song. It was up-tempo, and it was a hit all around the world. Thanks to YouTube, the video, the boys are so fresh and good-looking. Everybody loves them.
What Makes You Beautiful was a massive hit, going straight to the top of the UK charts, with the single becoming Sony Music's highest-selling pre-order track, racking up a staggering 100,000 sales in just 3 days. The song to date has sold over 5 million copies worldwide. On the back of this success, One Direction's first album, Up All Night, was released in November 2011, scoring #1s around the world. In 2012, it went straight in at #1 in the United States, making One Direction the first British act ever to top the charts with their debut album.
Debuted at #2 in the UK, it went straight to #1 in 20 countries, and the biggest mark of their success was the success in Canada and America.
Simon Cowell had more than an inkling the boys were going to be huge. So he left nothing to chance when it came to launching them around the world. He got the best producers on board, American producers, Swedish producers.
Simon clearly wasn't afraid to call in some favors in making Up All Night. He very cleverly enlisted the help of some very big names like Kelly Clarkson and Ed Sheeran and Red One. It gave them an instant credibility and an instant name recognition.
Simon Cowell knows the blueprint for a successful pop act, and he knows the successful blueprint for a boy band. He's done it with Westlife, he's done it with Five. So he knew the right people to contact to make them a success, Red One being a great example of that. But beyond that, people like Ed Sheeran, who could encourage a little bit of creativity in them and get on with them. So they spent quite a bit of time together too. And I think that helped because it suddenly encouraged them to think a little bit about providing their own vocals, providing their own songs. And I think the further down the career they go, they will try and write a bit more. I know at the moment, for example, that they've all built their own studios and have grand designs on what they can create themselves.
We co-wrote a few songs on the album as well, so that was really exciting to work with producers and stuff. we had our choice of how this order of the album goes. There's loads of things that we get our choice on, really. We just have our input every so often just to...
But even if we haven't written on a song and something comes in and we're like, oh, I'm not too sure about this lyric, obviously that's not classed as a co-write, but we still, even the songs that we don't write on, have a little look at it, and if we don't agree with it, we'll have our say.
What goes in the sleeve and stuff, so it's pretty good.
The thing about Simon is an A&R man. People forget that's what he did all his life. A&R, artist and repertoire. He picks songs and he picks artists. So he had an amazing amount of songs because he knew Westlife were coming to an end. So he had all these new producers. He had Steve Mack, he had Red One. He had an awful lot of great songs on his desk, waiting for the right act to come along. And guess what? The right act came along. It was One Direction on his show. So he had his own show, his own band, his own label. He owned this whole thing.
You know, and it's been one of the best years I've ever had.
Under Cowell's guidance, the impact of One Direction in the United States has been sensational. And while they have proved extremely popular in many countries around the world, success and acceptance in the American market validates the group as true global superstars.
One Direction would not be where they were today if it had not been for the American market. It's not to say that the Brits didn't love One Direction, that they weren't popular over here, but they might have very easily, in fact, I think, gone the way of other X Factor sensations here in the UK. I think what has launched them into international superstardom is the fact that the rest of the world, America, Canada, New Zealand, Australia, has reacted as if they were the Beatles, you know, coming over, kind of taking the rest of the English-speaking world.
And One Direction has taken America by storm. Their debut U.S. television appearance on The Today Show in March 2012 saw over 15,000 screaming fans descend on Rockefeller Plaza, causing scenes reminiscent of the Beatles and the British invasion of the 1960s.
I think the success of One Direction is part of a bigger picture at the moment. I think anything British that's remotely good is hugely popular over there at the moment. If you look at Mumford & Sons, if you look at TV dramas, Homeland and Damian Lewis and guys like that, British fashion, Stella McCartney. We've had the Olympics in the last year, so it's cool to be British. And One Direction are the flag bearers for our pop culture in this country at the moment.
And the band are not afraid to exploit their heritage, often performing with British iconography on their sets or videos, such as in One Thing, their third single from Up All Night.
Something's gotta give now, 'cause I'm dying just to make you see that I need you here with me now.
One Thing peaked at number 9 in the UK, becoming the third consecutive top 10 single from Up All Night. In the US, the song reached number 6.
It was, again, a real catchy song. I don't think anyone really knew that was going to be released as a single, but I think the fans really loved it.
When you look at British talent over the last couple of years, the ones that have really made an impact in the US are Adele and One Direction. And they could not be more different. Adele is all about singing from the heart and from personal experience. And One Direction are the complete opposite of that. They're mainstream pop at its best, yet when we look at someone like Adele, we immediately marvel at how amazingly she's done, whereas One Direction have actually eclipsed her, and I think that a lot of people will forget that.
Hi, we're One Direction. We're at the Brits 2012.
To cap their astounding introduction to the music world, One Direction managed to eclipse Adele again, when What Makes You Beautiful scooped the Brit Award for Best British Single in 2012. Voted for by their dedicated and web-savvy fans, the boys were shocked but extremely humble.
We would like to thank every single person that voted for us. The fans around the world have been absolutely incredible to us since we told them that we got nominated for a Brit, and it's an absolute pleasure to collect it, and it's just thank you very much.
They were genuinely so excited, jumping up and down, and you couldn't help but be pleased with them.
Their fans just voted and voted and voted. Nobody else had a chance. It was never going to be Adele. It was always going to be One Direction. And they won.
Underlining their popularity, One Direction's Up All Night tour sold out within minutes.
People to kind of want to see us to that extent is incredible for us, and obviously we've made the album, really proud of it, so we just want to make a good show for everyone to come and enjoy, and hopefully it will be.
And the boys took to their biggest stage ever in August when they performed at the prestigious closing ceremony of the London 2012 Olympic Games.
For One Direction to play at the Olympics closing ceremony in London was absolutely massive, because suddenly they were playing to the world. That's no understatement. And to be chosen to do this, you had to, really have proven yourself.
A lot of the other artists that were performing at the Olympics closing ceremony have been around for years. Like the Spice Girls reunited for it. It was a mass celebration of British culture. But One Direction were arguably one of the biggest stars there, and for them to have only been around for a couple of years really showed how successful they are.
They're used to thousands, tens of thousands of girls screaming at them in arenas all over the world, but it's all quite concentrated. Here they were playing to a global audience, and they must have known at that point that, yeah, they'd arrived.
On their rise to the top, the boys have accumulated an army of loyal fans because of their distinct and instantly likable personalities and good looks.
They all have their individual personalities, and that they're all different.
And they're amazing singers. And they're really good singers, and they're really good looking.
And they let their personalities show when they're singing and when they're
fit. They're well fit.
Well fit. I like Harry.
I like Zayn.
Harry, I love you.
In the UK, Harry Styles has acquired a reputation as a bit of a ladies' man, but his hard work and keen musical interests are also points of interest.
Harry cites his musical influences as Elvis and the Beatles. His dad actually used to play these songs, so he played them on loop and really got a taste for them, and that shows that he's got a bit of credibility. Now, Harry is a great singer, it's just not all about the looks.
I've got a lot of time for Harry Styles. I think he's a really interesting young man. Right at the very beginning in the One Direction story, I spent a bit of time with them to give them a bit of a talk about what they could expect from celebrity and fame from the newspaper's point of view. And Harry really sat down and took it on board. The rest of them, particularly Louis and Niall, were a little bit more immature at the time and a bit giggly, but Harry was soaking it all up. He's a really bright kid, very interested in vintage cars, likes his art. He spends a lot of time with older company, and I think it's a sign of his maturity, actually. He's a good guy. You read the paper, you hear that he's a total womanizer. And listen, he's a young man, he's a very good-looking young guy, he's a talented kid. Fair play to him, I say.
Which one of you guys gets most attention? Who do you say?
Barry.
Yeah, without a doubt, Harry Styles is the ladies' man. I'm not sure he particularly likes that image, and I don't think he likes the reputation, but unfortunately it's one that's definitely stuck.
On The X Factor, people really saw his cheeky personality. He always pushed the boundaries. He was very cheeky with the ladies.
When Matt Cardle won the show, Harry ran up and embraced him and was overheard saying some very salacious remark about basically how many women Matt was going to get because he won. And I think from that very first sexually charged comment, I think girls were like, whoa, who is this guy? He's 17, he's acting like he's Casanova.
I do remember watching The X Factor and kind of being blown away by these 5 guys. Harry just looked so good, and I felt bad because I'm over 30. However, Harry doesn't feel bad about liking people over 30. It's okay the other way around.
The then 17-year-old Harry raised more eyebrows in October 2011 when he started dating presenter Caroline Flack, who was 32.
Harry and Caroline got to know each other on The X Factor because she hosted the spin-off show Extra Factor. They became very fond of each other, and they were trying to lead this really clandestine relationship, but the paparazzi got onto it and the press went mad for it.
Caroline Flack actually got a lot of hate mail, death threats. She got a lot of bad press for the fact that she was, in fact, dating and possibly sleeping with such a young boy.
Anytime I saw Caroline and Harry together, they were always having fun. And it was like a childhood romance. And I was happy for them. A lot of people were judgmental about the age gap, but I saw them together. They were happy, absolutely. So it's nobody else's business except theirs.
What it did for Harry, though, was kind of cement in people's minds that he was the Lothario of the group. He was the heartthrob. He was the one that everybody wanted.
Harry has been linked with many beauties, and his love life is often in the headlines. In 2012, he started dating US superstar Taylor Swift.
When Taylor Swift and Harry Styles got together, there was a feeling that, not that he was punching above his weight, they're huge, but Taylor Swift is up there. So when she started dating him, it was like a real credibility check for him. You know, Taylor Swift's interested, that's good.
They were not shy about revealing this relationship. They went on a date to Central Park, and you don't often get new relationships seen in the public eye like that. I mean, there's definitely an element of them wanting to be seen.
Well, Taylor suddenly turned into this One Direction groupie almost, and was very open about how into Harry she was, and she went and met his mum back over here up north and was going to Chinese restaurants on a Saturday night, so it was all very suburban, all very non-showbiz.
I don't think the relationship was harmful to either of them. I mean, Harry being associated with Taylor definitely helped the band, but also Taylor wasn't that famous over here, so her association with Harry, in turn, catapulted her success in the UK.
But their relationship wasn't to last, and the pair broke up, with Taylor seemingly firing a parting shot at the One Direction Casanova.
You don't want to get on Taylor Swift's wrong side. You don't want to be the guy who breaks her heart, because she's notorious for writing about her experiences.
She wrote I Knew You Were Trouble. There are definitely rumours that it's about Harry, but when she performed it at the Brits shortly after they split up, it was directed at Harry, and she has said that it was even more of a passionate performance because the person it was directed at was sat in the front row.
I think with Harry, it was the first bad boy she dated. The first guy who liked her, but saw the world as being a bit of a candy shop and he could just have his pick. And he was not stopping at Taylor Swift.
He's got the it thing, and all the girls love him. He's cheeky, he's a great singer, and he loves his music. That's the one thing people don't know about Harry. He's a really, really good musician.
For One Direction, Harry seems to be the focal point of the group, particularly in the UK, and rumors are already abound that he is looking towards a solo career.
There were reports that Harry had been in LA recording solo material. His spokespeople said he was recording parts for an album with the boys, but that hasn't stopped the rumour mill going into overdrive that he's the one that will go solo. And if you look at the popularity of them, I mean, he has the most followers on Twitter. He is the one that's written about in the papers most, and he's the one with the most colourful lifestyle. So it kind of stands to reason that he would be the one that went solo, if any.
Of all of them, I think because of his intelligence and his interest in other things, he will go on to have a long career in whatever it is he chooses to do in entertainment.
While much is known of Harry Styles, Zayn Malik is something of a mystery to fans.
Zayn's the bad boy of the group. He's got the tattoos, he chain smokes, he had a highly publicised relationship with Rebecca Ferguson, who was also on the X Factor, but a few years older than him.
She's 26 years old, and she was a mum of 2. The way One Direction had been portrayed in the press up until that point was very much as schoolboys, not really boys who would have serious girlfriends, and definitely not guys who would have serious girlfriends that were mums. And the relationship lasted about 6 months.
He doesn't like them as old as Harry Styles, but he likes the women.
We're just 5 young lads that, you know, love singing and
women.
Performing, and we love women, and women seem to...
Really general. I promise.
We love women, and women seem to like us, so yeah, it's wicked.
When Zayn grew up, I think he was a bit of an outcast at school. He felt a bit isolated. His dad's from Pakistan, his mum's from England, and he talks about the fact that he was kind of left out a bit at school because of his heritage.
If you spend time with him together, he is the quietest, the most aloof, and he can be a little bit elusive in interviews. I think that's mainly because he is quite a quiet guy. He's a shy bloke, doesn't have a lot to say.
He was very unsure of himself, which was a nice thing about him. He was very unsure, didn't realise how well he looked. Very good singer, not a solo star, but perfect in the boy band.
Well, Zayn, to talk to him, you wouldn't necessarily think he was in a boy band. He's very insecure about his dancing. I remember he came into my office once with the rest of the boys to play me their new single, and I remember asking who was the best, who was the worst dancer in the group, and Zayn put his hand up and said, "I'm the worst dancer, I really struggle."
Zayn didn't have the confidence that all the other boys had at the first audition, and when everybody was asked to dance, Zayn was, I think he ran away. I think he went off stage, he didn't want to dance, but Simon went and found him and said, "Zayn, get on the stage, you know, this is your chance, this is your moment, this could change your life." And it did. And the thing is, you cannot teach people how to sing, but you can always teach them how to dance. And when he got his confidence, he just fit into that boy band perfect. And all the girls love Zayn.
Zayn is very, very sexy for a young boy, I hasten to add. But he's adorable. He's absolutely adorable. And he kind of has this brooding, dark, James Dean thing, swagger.
Following his relationship with Rebecca Ferguson, Zayn then got together with Perry Edwards from the 2011 X Factor winning group Little Mix, but his bad boy antics soon got him into hot water.
Zayn's girlfriend is Perry from Little Mix. They're quite a serious couple. However, he got into trouble because he was with an Australian waitress. Now, he could have just said, no, it's not true, but she had the evidence. She had taken a picture of him while he was sleeping. He still denies much happened, but yeah, he's a bad boy.
Very recently, he's had his fingers burnt with some of his antics, so he has a little bit of growing up to do. Although I think of the 5 members, he's probably the most mysterious and interesting for that very reason.
I think Zayn is very brooding, perhaps a little moody, and the girls that go for that kind of guy are very happy that he's represented in the group.
The key to One Direction's success is that there's a fanciable male for every sort of man that you want. Any girl that has an ideal man can find elements of it in one of One Direction.
Hello. Hi, how are you?
Louis Tomlinson brings energy to One Direction, and although he's seen as the joker of the pack, there's more to him than meets the eye.
Of all the guys, Louis is the one that I got to know best first, and he is a great character. I love his company. He's a really interesting character. He's got a lot of fingers and a lot of pies, young Louis. He has his own football team, and he's a good boyfriend as well. You know, he's a trustworthy man, and he respects Eleanor, his girlfriend.
Louis is the prankster of One Direction, well and truly. He's sort of the light-hearted guy, and probably the one I would say who's reveling the most in One Direction's success.
Yeah, it's been a great night. It's been great performing, and obviously to win an award is just huge.
When I was backstage at one of the One Direction shows, the boys were given a bottle of very expensive champagne, and it was still a couple of hours before they were even due on stage, and the person who very quickly opened the champagne and started guzzling directly from the bottle was Louis. The others wouldn't have even had a drop of it.
Louis Tomlinson, cheeky chappy again, funny haircut. Girls love him, and even if he wasn't going to be a solo star, he's perfect for a boy band, and he's got a great personality.
Louis is somebody who has an acting background. At a very early age was appearing as an extra, as a small bit part on various television programs. He's got a great look. He has a natural ease in front of the camera. And I think whether it was acting or singing, Louis was always going to be in show business.
He's a character, you know, he's a very big character. I could almost see him going down the route of being a TV presenter or something like that in the future, because he does have just this incredibly big, confident personality.
So yeah, and that doesn't finish till November, and he's telling me to say I'm Irish.
He's a good guy. I think a lot of Louis. When we first sat down for that media training, when I spent some time with him, he was the loose cannon that could have sunk the ship before it had even left port. But he's really sort of knuckled down and got his head round that and managed to behave himself just enough.
One thing the fans love about Louis is his close friendship with Harry Styles and how the pair behaves together.
Who wouldn't love it?
Harry and Louis have such great chemistry, in fact, that actually you can interchange the name. They're often called Larry Stylinson. They kind of put it all together. It's like the Brangelina of the band. They have this bromance going on.
The bromance between him and Harry is often joked about and even parodied by fans on YouTube videos. They just love each other, they adore each other as pals do.
In fact, they live together. And from the very beginning, they talked about the fact that they were going to get a place together. And he and Harry have become best friends.
Louis cites idols such as Michael Jackson, who he completely loves, but his biggest kind of fan experience was when he met Robbie Williams on The X Factor. And Robbie is someone whose career he's followed, someone he really has wanted to be. Robbie was always the joker of Take That. He was the one that was a little bit different, who kind of kept everyone on their toes, and I think there's a lot of Louis in him.
I think that you really need someone like that to lighten the load when you're knackered, when you've had 10 dates in a row doing gigs, and he's that guy.
In the UK, Harry Styles grabs most of the spotlight in One Direction. But in the United States, the fans go crazy for Irish member Niall Horan.
Every boy band has one Irish guy in it, you know. So little Niall Horan was there with the funny haircut. Because when he auditioned first in Dublin, he had this silly Justin Bieber haircut. But he had great personality and great likability. And when it came to putting the band together, you have to have an Irish guy in it. So he filled out the numbers.
Our fans are quite the same all around the world, in my best Dublin accent.
So Niall is described as the young Justin Bieber of the band, and when he auditioned, actually, he was the one, when I saw his audition initially on TV, before this band had been formed, he was the one who I thought instantly massive commercial appeal, because he looked like Justin Bieber. And he had that Irish accent, which I think people just find very endearing.
The first time I spoke to him, his voice hadn't even broken. So you have to remember that he's grown up quite a lot in the last few years. Hugely popular with the fans across the pond. And that Irish thing will always work in America for you. He's just had his teeth straightened. He's spending his money like it's going out of fashion. He's just bought a Range Rover recently, and he has a life-size waxwork of Barack Obama. The shortest attention span of anybody I have ever met, but also one of the most endearing young blokes I know.
Niall is probably the most talented of the group.
He used to sing along to the radio, and one day his aunt or something said she thought it was the radio and he was singing, and that made him really happy. He started playing guitar when he was really young. He always wanted to be a singer. He was very much inspired by people like the Beatles, and I think that Niall always kind of knew that this is what he was destined to do.
The only thing is that I do think that in time to come, because he is so musically talented, may want his own solo career, and I think he really could do it. And actually, he's the biggest success in America, far bigger than Harry Styles, who is the standout in the UK.
It was quite surprising for me going out to America and seeing the reaction to the boys, the fact that Niall was so popular out there, and probably 6 out of 10 placards being held up were with Niall's name on. Marry me, Niall, and I love you, Niall.
And I think for Niall, the American crazy mania over him has probably been really gratifying, because they've turned him into the star that he always believed that he had the potential to be.
Liam Payne is the most grounded member of the group.
The band sort of describe him as their unofficial leader. He's the sensible one. He's the one who's always going to be on time, will always keep the others in line.
I think Liam is the sensible one. You've got to remember that he'd had a crack at X Factor before the rest of the lads, and there was a spell in his life where he was playing holiday camps in Wales and going around little gigs being paid 50 quid and a little bit of money here and there, and some really embarrassing and tough gigs to go through.
I love Liam from day one because I loved his attitude. He had auditioned before as a solo artist. This was his second time back on X Factor, and he definitely had something, and he was a great singer. And I loved the fact that he just so wanted it. And I remember us saying to him, would you like to be in a boy band? And he said, yeah. He wasn't even negative or hesitant about it. They all wanted to be in boy bands. That was the good thing about it, and that's why I worked with the five together.
He's the one that was always going to have the music career. He was always going to work on his voice. And I think when the band first got together, he might have seemed like the more sensible, maybe the boring one. But I actually think he's really come out of his shell in the last couple of years.
So he worked quite hard to get this success. Now he has it, he's going to make the most of it. So he's very sensible with his money, he's not extravagant, he certainly watches his pennies. So yeah, I think he is the wise man of the band.
Every day is different, we have so much fun. And it's just, I don't know, I can't imagine being like a solo artist or something now, because you have so much fun in a group and just kind of blending together, and that's what makes it all enjoyable.
Liam's ability to overcome adversity is nothing new for him. As a child, he was troubled with various health issues that could have prevented him from ever having a career.
As a child, he had a damaged kidney, basically, and had to have something like 32 injections morning and night. There was a nurse that his family had to hire to help him with this stuff. And because of that, even now, he has to be really careful what he drinks, even including water, because he still has this very damaged kidney. So, you know, Liam is very health conscious because he needs to be. He's very physically fit. You know, he's a big runner. He loves running. He boxes. He's been boxing since he was a child. In part because he was actually bullied at school and needed to learn to defend himself. But you know, Liam's had to grow up fast.
But Liam's success has also led to some sadness when his relationship with long-term girlfriend Danielle Peaser came to an end.
Yeah, Liam actually split up with his girlfriend Danielle Peaser because she couldn't cope with the fame that was thrust upon them so quickly.
And they were together for 2 years. And basically when they went off and went on a worldwide tour, it's so difficult for them to maintain a relationship.
During their time together, Danielle also found herself the target of some of One Direction's fans.
Danielle received death threats and all kinds of hate, aggressive, angry messages on Twitter and Facebook from fans of One Direction who are angry that Liam is with her. And this is really kind of part of the dark side, the downside of being a celebrity or being involved with a celebrity.
I don't think anything can really prepare you for having 10 million followers on Twitter, with a large percentage of them being young girls who are willing to say the worst thing in the world to get a reaction. So it has been a difficult path for her to follow.
And I think that is going to really affect him, the fact that he can't hold his relationship down purely because of his career.
I think regardless of who One Direction choose to go out with, the girls are always going to get a hard time. It's the same throughout the history of boy bands. In fact, for years, most of them were told not to have girlfriends, or if they did, not to make it public because they didn't want to spoil the illusion. Don't let the light in on the magic.
The use of social media has had both a positive and negative effect for One Direction. Before Up All Night was released in the US, the group used social media and digital downloads to promote the album and gained a massive following.
They already had an American following from the internet before they ever had set foot in the country.
Twitter's been fantastic for One Direction, and were it not for social media, I don't have any doubt that they would not have cracked the States.
One Direction, they tweet originally and put a bit of effort and thought into it, and they're quite funny and quite witty. And they also, more importantly, respond to fans.
So they'll retweet things, they'll really engage with them, and that is something so powerful that once upon a time pop stars never had.
So how did you guys hear about it, and when did you...
I think I looked at Harry's the other day and he's got over 10 million. It's incredible. And, they harness that power very well, but it's the power with responsibility.
We run our phones constantly on Twitter as well.
While Twitter and social media have helped boost One Direction's profile, it has also been a ground on which modern bands quarrel. One Direction's feud with fellow UK and Irish boy band The Wanted has been a long-running affair.
A couple of times they've got on the wrong side of Twitter by getting involved in battles with The Wanted. And they should know better about that. There's no winner in situations like that.
I think it actually started about 14, 15 months ago when Tom Parker from The Wanted revealed in an interview that he actually had auditioned for the X Factor at age 16 and had been crushed or heartbroken when he hadn't got in. And obviously One Direction picked up on this and took the mick slightly, given that in the past The Wanted have been very quick to slate One Direction as a manufactured kind of boy band. So it all started from there really, and it's just got worse and worse and more sweary.
The boys have also argued with indie folk singer Jake Bugg via Twitter. But for all its good, social media has a dark side, as One Direction have found out.
I know Zayn encountered a lot of racism, and his family are being targeted by a lot of Twitter trolls. And that sort of thing for a young boy, I mean, you can understand why he didn't want to be part of it, and he decided to quit Twitter. And within a couple of days, he was back on there. And I do think that their management know that they do need to be on there. They're not able to turn their back on their fans.
By 2012, One Direction were riding high. They quickly released their second album, Take Me Home, in November that year. And once again, Simon Cowell was the mastermind behind them.
The first album, weirdly, a lot of people forget, hasn't sold as many copies in the UK as JLS. So I think the idea of getting the second album out quickly was a really good idea because they knew that it was a chance to keep the sales coming in off the back of that peak of fame that they were beginning to get.
For their album Take Me Home, Simon Cowell basically put it out there and said to the best producers in the world, if you want to work on this, then come ahead. And all of a sudden, there was a queue of the best producers in the world, which, for One Direction is astonishing because they came from this manufactured pop talent TV show background. And you would have been laughed out of court if you'd have said in a year's time, you will have the best producers in the world fighting tooth and nail to produce for them.
Take Me Home saw One Direction working with some of the producers behind their debut album's success. And also, thanks to Simon Cowell's call-out, other top-producing names including Shellback and Dr. Luke. Picking up from where they left off with Up All Night, lead single Live While We're Young sought to maintain the fun and energy of the band.
Live While We're Young is a hugely anthemic song. It captures the mood of the band and their fans as well, celebrating being young.
Savanka Techa, who worked with them a lot on the first album, was very keen to make sure that the first song from this album was meant to continue from what Makes You Beautiful had done and really cement them on a global scale.
Let's go crazy, crazy, crazy till we see the sun.
Live While We're Young peaked at number 3 in both the US and the UK, underlining that One Direction were more than a one-hit wonder.
Tonight, let's get some and live while we
Live While We're Young was a huge hit. On YouTube alone, it had over 200 million hits, and it was a top 10 single all over the world. And they proved that the myth of having that tricky second album, well, they just blew it away.
I think Live While We're Young is the perfect One Direction song. It's about having a fun night out, and they're 5 young boys at the end of the day. Lyrically, I mean, it talks about getting some, and it talks about basically having a one-night stand. But I think that's really important for their audience because they are going to go out, call some girls, and sing about it in a song. But they're not doing anything wrong. They're having a good time, and I think it's important that they don't patronise their fan base.
Video for Live While We're Young shows the boys at a festival just being young guys having a ball. Ironically, they can't really do that now. Harry Styles, Zayn Malik goes down the street, they're followed by paparazzi, and sometimes they really do wish they could have more normality in their lives. Sure, they wouldn't change the jet-set lifestyle and the success they've had in the number ones, but there is an element to not being able to go down the pub and just have a pint with a couple pals.
What part of your life is still normal?
Us.
Not this part, definitely not this part.
And while Live While We're Young featured slightly more adult references, follow-up single Little Things, written by Ed Sheeran, played back into the hands of the starry-eyed fans.
In the songs What Makes You Beautiful and also Little Things, it's a really positive image that One Direction are singing to their fans because they're talking about normal girls, especially Little Things, when he's talking about the lines around your eyes and you can't fit into your jeans, you're pulling them on, but I still love you. Now, the vast majority of girls out there do have their faults. So they're thinking, Harry's speaking to me, I couldn't get my jeans on this morning.
I know you've never loved the crinkles by your eyes when you smile. You've never loved your stomach or your thighs, the dimples in your back at the bottom of your spine, but I'll love them endlessly.
A lot of their fan base struggle with self-esteem issues. They're of that age and it's difficult being a teenage girl. And this sort of song will promote their self-esteem and allow them to be more confident in themselves.
And the marketing behind it is genius, absolutely genius. And we buy into it. We want to be the girl that they're talking about.
And it's nice for the girls who are spending their money and are waiting outside their hotel to catch a glimpse of them to think that actually they might be in with a chance.
With tracks like Little Things and the album as a whole, there were signs that the One Direction boys were maturing as they progress in their career.
It may be a slow transformation, but it is happening. When you compare the first to the second album, the boys have grown up a little bit, and there's a huge difference between being an 18-year-old newcomer to 20 years old. I think we will see a progression to a bit edgier lyrics and music. And you also see Liam and Niall increasingly playing the guitar on some of the singles. And you know, they want to be taken seriously as credible musicians, not just manufactured pop, and they say yes to all the lyrics that are presented to them. They're having more of a say.
In December 2012, shortly after Take Me Home was released, One Direction played one of their biggest concerts yet at the prestigious Madison Square Garden in New York, with a show that wowed their American fans.
When One Direction played Madison Square Gardens, that was the real moment for me that I realised they were absolutely huge.
It was absolutely insane, it was absolutely crazy. I remember getting there during their sound rehearsals and there were queues, girls going back, I don't know, 500 metres all around the block, and that was at 2 in the afternoon. People had been camping out all night. When One Direction on stage, it was just absolutely heaving, but they nailed it, it was fantastic.
One Direction took to the road again in 2013 for the Take Me Home tour. Selling out arenas in Europe, Oceania, and North America, the boys put on a spectacular live show at venues such as London's O2 Arena.
One Direction, they've come on a lot since I first saw them on stage at the X Factor. They just looked like a group of teenage boys stuck together for some talent show at school. And then now seeing them for the first time with this tour at the O2 Arena Up All Night, it was impressive. You know, they've got a great production, they've thought about it, there's some great slick stuff in between when they're doing their outfit changes and all that, some great little clips in between to keep the crowd interested.
Well, when you go to a One Direction show, first of all, you have to bring earplugs because it's next level screaming, it really is.
Well, I've been to a few One Direction gigs now, and each time their management have provided me with a set of earplugs and advised me to wear them, and I do because the noise is ridiculous.
They wink from the stage and it gets a cheer. They go off stage for a costume change, that gets a cheer. Everything they do gets a cheer.
And they keep everybody in the stadium or arena involved as well by getting out into the middle, in the round. And they mix it up very well with Niall doing his little bit on the guitar and each member taking their little bit to ad-lib between songs. So they have become quite good performers in a very short space of time.
During their shows, the One Direction boys continue their use of social media to help the audience interact.
They used to fit it in a really innovative way. During their gigs, they ask fans to text questions in. They appear on a big screen behind them and they'll answer them. And a lot of the questions are absolutely ridiculous, and the more absurd, the better. It's good for the fans to be able to interact with them and see their personalities. At the moment, there seems to be a craze for every gig someone asks them to make a human pyramid. And they're very good at making a human pyramid, actually. It's an impressive pyramid.
In February 2013, One Direction used their massive global popularity to raise awareness and money for comic relief in the UK by releasing their version of classic punk pop tracks One Way or Another and Teenage Kicks.
This year, we decided to make a single to raise money for Comic Relief.
Comic Relief are a British charity that do amazing work helping people all over Africa and in the UK living with really tough lives.
One Direction covered One Way or Another and Teenage Kicks for Comic Relief, which was great for Comic Relief because they had the biggest young band in the world, basically marketing for them.
It was a big song for them to cover, but they've been covering Teenage Kicks in their live shows ever since they first formed. So it was quite an obvious next release. I think they had to do something interesting with it. And they really did. And they brought it to life with the video because they made it all themselves. And they really enjoyed it. You could tell they really enjoyed it.
One way or another, I'm gonna find ya. I'm gonna get you one way or another. I'm gonna win ya.
Promoting the single and the charity, the boys played the song live at the 2013 Brit Awards.
It's a charity single, obviously, a cover of the classic Blondie tune, One Way or Another. We're just massively honoured to be a part of it, and we're just loving the fact that we get to do something amazing for such an amazing cause.
Goodness knows how many girls picked up the phone and donated a £5 because they're in love with Harry Styles or Zayn Malik.
One Way or Another went to the top of the charts in the UK, contributing to the millions of pounds raised for Comic Relief. The single even got endorsement from a special guest in the video.
Yeah, the success has just gone to such a level that even David Cameron was clamouring to be in it. And I think all of that just shows how popular they are.
And it was also great for the boys to show that they had this caring side.
Prior to the single's release in January 2013, One Direction visited the African nation of Ghana to see not only the terrible conditions in which the people were living, but also where the Comic Relief money was being spent. For the 5 boys, it turned out to be a humbling experience.
I don't think they really expected what was going to happen when they went to Africa. I think they went to Ghana at the time for Comic Relief, and it certainly hit home with Harry and Louis. I remember both of them sending messages around the time saying it genuinely moved them.
They'd obviously never seen poverty like it, you know, most of us haven't. So we saw them crying on camera. They weren't aware of the cameras, they were, you know, oblivious, and it was all genuine emotion, which I think, unless you're, you know, made of steel, you're going to be touched by.
They were all so visibly moved by the experience. And I think it's important for them to remember that while they are in a privileged position, that other people are living in poverty, but the experience allows them to then use their privileged position to help other people.
Yeah, one thing I'd say about One Direction is they're definitely not spoiled brats. There's no suggestion they've turned into little Hollywood monsters like quite a lot of pop stars have done in the past. And that's good, you know, if they can have those things happen to them once every 6 months, it'll keep their feet on the ground.
One Direction's incredible rise to the top was recognized in 2013 with the specially created Brit Award for Global Success.
Huge congratulations. This is the Brits Global Success Award. You have sold 9.5 million albums. You've played in pretty much every country around the world. Harry, let's start with you.
This award is absolutely crazy. Just thank you so much. It's incredible. Thanks.
I think the Brits 2013 was a real turning point for One Direction because that was actually an award they won that was invented for them. There'd never been a global award or a global success award. So when you're in a position where an organisation have to make up an award for you, you've reached a certain stature.
And 2013 will also see the release of One Direction's first film entitled This Is Us. The Access All Areas documentary is directed by Morgan Spurlock and will be wowing fans in August.
Spurlock's here himself. We're shooting a movie. Like it's actually just been in the toilet with us, no lie. That is coming out on the August 30th, and it's going to be very Access All Areas.
That's when you can see us in the toilet.
One Direction are getting their own film. It's going to be called This Is Us, and it's going to be in 3D, which is the norm for pop bands now. Justin Bieber had a 3D film. JLS had a 3D film. It's just another step closer that fans can get to the band. This is going to be a kind of tell-all documentary. They started filming in Tokyo last year, and I think that was the first time One Direction had been to Japan. And obviously that's a completely new experience for them. And for a lot of their fans who are UK-based, it's the other side of the world. But by making this film, the fans can feel like they've travelled with them and they can feel like they've been there, backstage for all the dramas and seen the tears, the tantrums, and there's a lot of proposed nudity in it, so I'm sure that will fly.
As the One Direction juggernaut continues to thunder through the music scene and up the charts, there doesn't appear to be any let-up in the boys' desire to keep going, nor their fans' insatiable hunger. In May 2013, the band announced a massive worldwide stadium tour for 2014, as well as their new album, which they claim will feature a more edgy sound. With the world at their feet, Harry, Liam, Zayn, Louis, and Niall are going to continue their journey in One Direction.
They are the artists in this country who are selling the most records, not just on British turf, but around the world. And by around the world, we mean everywhere. They're huge.